At first, it was very hard to decide where the sound had come from. The blackness, which hung as thick as the million years of decay in the night, made my eyes useless. I was only aware of the dampness under my shriveled fingertips on the slick-oiled barrel of the shotgun, the penetrating musk of the ancient jungle on the back of my tongue, and the squeaks, chirps, grates, and whistles that blended into the dark symphony of the British Honduras rainforest at 2 a.m. 2 a.m.? Maybe. I had left my wristwatch back in camp, so its ticking wouldn't betray my hiding place. I gently shifted my numbed backside on the rack of hardwood poles that formed the floor of the 12-foot-tall macan, and felt my spine grind into the rough bark of the tree that was the central support for the frail blind. I closed my eyes and began to filter the many sounds through my brain, like cards through a computer. I sifted the hum and drone of mosquitoes from the whisper of other, smaller bloodsuckers about my head and wrists, the howl of tree frogs from the rasp of the big brown forest crickets in the humus below, and the pad of raindrops slapping the broad leaves from the liquid rustle of the river. Each tiny reverberation was identified and rejected. Then I heard it again. At my left, I could faintly hear still another sound, Blackbeard breathing. I thought about the big, lean hunter on the platform with me. Although he was clean-shaven, what else could you call a man named William Teach? Surely one of the fierce pirates' many descendants on the British Honduras coast. I could imagine his rugged face straining into the murk, registering the same apprehension that plucked at my stomach. Then his hand touched my leg in warning, and I could feel the fear in his hard grip. He was telling me that death was close by in the darkness. Below and in front of us, I heard the pig scuffle lightly on the ground, straining hard at the thong of green tapir skin that fettered him to a stake driven deep into the scabby forest floor. He knew better than to cry out, but moved restlessly in the shallow depression he had rooted out. That was their bait, you see. Jaguar? I listened harder. It was the tiniest scraping sound, familiar but like a long-forgotten face, somehow misplaced in my brain. It seemed to edge nearer, then stopped. Blackbeard's spring-steel fingers tightened on my leg like a trap, and I could smell his fear, acrid terror in the moist blackness. A horrible sound like the hiss of a pressure cooker stood my hackles up like an icy wind as the realization struck my brain. Snake! There's a snake on the macan with us. I jumped from the blind, struggling to keep upright, but preparing to roll if I hit the ground off balance. I felt myself turn in midair and land on my shoulder in a blaze of pain, the breath wheezing out of me. A cry of hurt and horror whipped from above to thump wetly on the ground nearby. I thrashed for the switch to my headlamp, torn off by the jump, but attached by the battery cord in my bush jacket pocket. I found it and punched the toggle, dragging the downturned reflector to me by the cord. I flashed it at Blackbeard. What I saw in the pale beam will be engraved in my mind forever. He lay on his back, motionless in the amber flood of the light, his eyes like those of a wild animal. Less than a yard from his body was a thick, olive-brown coil covered with rough triangles of scaly hide. My mind struggled to identify the creature and sagged with hopelessness. Barba amarilla, yellowbeard, 7 feet of Bothrops atrox, the deadly tree-climbing night snake of Central America. I felt a dry, cotton alum taste in my mouth as I stared at the snake's heavy head, the tongue flashing beneath bright chips of sapphire blue. Think! Where's the shotgun? You dropped it when you jumped. I saw the dull glint of the barrels between Blackbeard and the snake. No way to reach it. A stick? There might be a stick. I glanced around and saw a half-rotted limb on the fern-covered riverbank and edged toward it, keeping the beam steadily on the snake, hoping the light would partly dazzle it. It didn't. It gave a great, dry, angry hiss, a sound as threatening and cold as sleet on a dark morning. Should I keep moving for the stick? Wait? Indecision coursed through me. If I had the pistol, we wouldn't be in this spot. I had to reach the stick. Sooner or later, that snake would hit Teach if I didn't try to do something, most likely sooner. Ignoring the snake's threatening hisses, I was at the branch in 3 slow strides. I winced as pain lanced through my right shoulder when I tried to lift the branch. Gripping the wood in my left hand, I edged back towards the snake, the makeshift club held high. Too late. Like an arrow whipping from a bow, the triangular head lashed out and latched onto Blackbeard's arm, thrashing and chewing yellow venom deep through the long fangs. With a strangled scream of pain and revulsion, Teach grabbed the thick snake behind the head and ripped it loose. I dashed for the shotgun and blew it in two with the first barrel as it reared up to strike again. The second load of buckshot exploded the head completely. Quick, tourniquet and incisions. I undid the shotgun sling and fastened it tightly just above Teach's elbow, just loosely enough to permit arterial flow, then took my skinning knife and cut 4 incisions through the swelling fang wounds. The hunter was calm, his face the color of flour. If we spoke, I don't remember it. He knew better than to panic, but he also knew he'd gotten a full bite from a big snake, almost a death sentence, this far from a hospital. I sucked the wound for 5 minutes. I knew I had gotten some out of the arm, but how much more might have entered his system before I got the tourniquet on was impossible to tell. The wound was starting to swell badly, turning blue and purple. Blackbeard's expression showed that the pain must have been considerable. I knew the only thing to do was to get him back to camp and to the antivenin in the cooler. I also knew I had to get him there fast. By the time I had carried the big hunter back to the dugout, he was bleeding from the gums and spitting weakly. I knew that bleeding from the mouth and sometimes from the eyes was a typical symptom of the hemotoxic Bothrops venom. I also knew that a mist of blood could develop over large areas of the skin in severe, untreated cases. Blackbeard complained of a raging thirst, headache, and difficulty in breathing. I didn't know whether to give him water or not, but decided it probably couldn't hurt. I got him into the canoe with some difficulty because of my painful shoulder and arranged his headlamp as a beacon to light our way down the 8 black miles of jungle river. Except for pauses to loosen and retighten his tourniquet, I paddled like a man obsessed until the jungle camp loomed into sight just at false dawn. Jose, the mestizo cook, was puttering around the fire when he saw something was wrong and came running to help me move the delirious Blackbeard to his hammock. There were 3 kits of antivenin in the foam cooler, the serum which is made by injecting horses with ever-increasing doses of venom could produce a deadly reaction in anyone sensitive to it, so I conducted the sensitivity test advised by the instructions. I injected a 10-to-1 solution of the antivenin under the skin of Teach's unbitten right forearm. If there was no allergic reaction within 20 minutes, I knew it would then be all right to give him the life-saving serum. But within 8 minutes, the injection had turned his right arm flaming red, and it had begun to swell. Blackbeard would die more surely from the serum than from the bite if I injected him, although it looked as if he would anyway. Beautiful, I thought. Just nifty. There I was, 30 miles up a jungle river, in jungle that makes the Everglades look like Central Park, with a guy who's got less than a half chance of pulling through, and no way to help him. Each minute Teach looked more like he was ready to give up the ghost, struggling for breath in the hammock, his mouth crusted with drying blood from his oozing gums. I splashed some cold water over his face from the bag hanging on the hammock, and had another look at the bite. Gosh awful. His arm was swollen to the size of his thigh, the tissue around the fang wounds the color of Concord grapes. Unless somebody did something, and pretty quick, it was going to be one very long-gone goose. In my business, I get to see a lot of screwball things, particularly concerning human life and death. I've seen bush Africans lie down and just die a couple of days after being told they were bewitched. I've seen others, the Maasai, heal without infection from lion maulings that had deposited enough bacteria in the gashes to wipe out most of Manhattan. In Haiti and India, I've seen men push steel rods through their bodies without a sign of blood, yet watched Ethiopians die from the old custom of packing a thorn wound with camel dung. I've seen most of the folk medicine of at least 3 continents, but I wasn't prepared for what I saw that day on Monkey River. Jose, the Mayan English cook, didn't look much like Dr. Schweitzer, so when he showed up with his snake fixins, I was a bit skeptical. "My pappy was a snake doctor, sir," he told me, "and I can fix up the Tommy Guff bite goods new." I looked at the little pile of paraphernalia in his thick hands with a raised eyebrow. "Just what is all that stuff, Jose?" It looked more like salad seasonings than a snakebite cure. He continued in his unusual brand of English, a blend of accents that included West Indian, Mississippi, and Cockney. "This here's armadillo fat, nice and hot." He displayed a black-lidded marmalade jar. "And this is bark. I don't know what kind, 'cause my pappy give 'em to me long time ago. He call it Nayoka bark." I wondered if there was any connection between Jose's Nayoka bark and the identical Swahili word for snake. It seemed likely, but only heaven knew where his father might have gotten the word. Jose completed the inventory of his fixins by shaking a small manila envelope full, he said, of fresh peppercorns. "Look, Jose, Teach here's in big trouble," I said, gesturing to the stricken hunter. "If we don't figure out some way to help him, he's going to cash in. Go west, know what I mean?" He nodded. "This is not the time to go fooling around with some darn fool recipe for snakebite, get me?" "So these fixins'll save his life, make him well in a couple of days. My pappy, famous in BH for being snake doctor, saved all kind of folk what got bit by Tommy Guffs. Even helped a few bit by bushmasters, but then he lost a lot of those too." He paused and thought, craftiness gleaming in his dark eyes. "Anyway, just what you going to do to fix him up? He can't take that needle, and unless we try something, he's sure proper gonna up and die." I looked over at Teach and realized Jose had a point. There was nothing more I could do, so what the heck. Jose reheated the armadillo fat until it looked like rancid bacon drippings and smeared a dollop over and around the area of the bite. I could see Teach's grim face tighten with the added pain, but he made no sound. Jose made a thick poultice of soaked tobacco leaves, bound them into place over the wound, and added more fat to the top of the mess that hung on Teach's arm like a giant leech. Bringing the teapot and water, he spooned in 4 measures of the strange dried bark and added half a handful of crushed peppercorns. Pouring the foul-looking concoction into a battered enamel mug, he forced the whole mess down the sick man's throat. "Got to get the poison out of his stomach for him to live," said Jose. "At least, that's what my pappy always say." Teach gagged down the last of the brew. For 10 minutes, nothing happened, except perhaps that Blackbeard began to look even worse. If that was even possible. I thought we'd really done it this time. Killed the poor man, trying to cure him with some medieval brew that Merlin would have scoffed at. Then Blackbeard began to, he started to reject all the poison out of his body. For 5 minutes he retched until too weak to continue, then closed his bloodshot eyes and lay back. I thought he was dead, but he began to breathe more deeply and easily until he passed into what seemed a strong, natural sleep. "The poison get all gathered up in the stomach," said Jose as he checked the poultice. "I think we got most of it out. Anyway, he do look better." He did too, to my surprise. I began to realize how tired and hungry I was. Cracking a bottle of sweat-beaded ale from the evaporation bag, I poured it straight down my throat, then opened another to enjoy more slowly. Gratefully, I sank down in the canvas camp chair and asked Jose to rustle up some grub. 3 times Jose refilled the skillet until I felt like an anaconda that had engulfed a pig just a little too large. In the shade of the big orchid-covered mahogany tree that formed an umbrella over our camp, I fell asleep. The dying sun was a blotch of soft orange and pink over Monkey River as I awoke to the gentle nudging. It was Teach standing over me. I blinked, then blinked again. He looked tired and weak, but I could see in his eyes that he was very much recovered. I knew it was impossible, unthinkable that Jose's snake fixins had cured him, but there he stood in the twilight, smiling slightly. "I'm gonna be okay," he said slowly in the soft local Creole dialect. "Thanks a lot, Mon, for helping me. Bad chaps, those Tommygoffs." "Not me, Teach," I corrected him. "It was Jose that fixed you up. I thought you were dead meat." He smiled a little wider, his face still wan, but the look of death gone from his eyes. If there was ever a man reprieved from the dead, it was, I decided, William Teach. He sat down next to me, still shaky, but able to navigate. "Let's rest up for a day or so, then go back and get that jaguar for you. Is the pig still out there?" I had forgotten all about the tethered pig bait when Blackbeard was bitten by the snake. Teach reckoned that by now it would have been found and killed by the big cat we had been waiting for. Figuring on the small size of the pig, he concluded that the cat would be ready to kill again the following night. I staked out the second pig and attached the monofilament, trailing it back to the macan. With the light, I carefully, very carefully, checked the branches above for snakes. They were clear. Hearing the soft swirl of Jose's paddle digging into the dark water as he pulled away, I settled back to listen and wait. One of the most difficult things about waiting for a big cat in total blackness is that, surprisingly, it's hard to concentrate. After a few hours of the tremendous mental effort necessary to constantly sort out the variety of night noises, any one of which your life might depend upon, your brain becomes as exhausted as after a long, difficult chess match. There's absolutely nothing to see in the jungle night, the sky completely hidden by the shroud of trees above, and very little to feel except for your aching backside and the smooth comfort of the gun in your hands. Your mind begins to wander, to drift, much as in road hypnosis. You wonder if maybe there really is something to vitamin E, or who was the first person to eat a raw oyster. The sudden icy night shower shakes you back to reality as a few drops trickle down your neck. You think about the little plastic toggle in your fist, the switch to the lamp. Get over anxious and hit the light too soon before the jaguar is in the open, and he'll melt away like a wraith. Too late, and you may find that he's noticed something besides the pig, something he may regard as even more appetizing than pork. You. How many hours have passed? 1, 5? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Then, you know he's there. You don't know how, but your heart's slamming sure. There's been no sound, no scent, no hint of movement, but he's there, close. It's the same feeling you get when someone stares at the back of your head, the same sixth sense that makes your hackles rise to protect your jugular. Suddenly you realize what it is. You're actually feeling the terror of the pig, heavy waves of fear coming from below you as you know the little black porker has winded death. The minutes creep by excruciatingly as you shut your eyes and strain your ears harder into the dark stillness. The thump, like distant muffled drums, is your own pulse swelling in your ears, adrenaline pumping into your bloodstream. There's a hard knot somewhere below your throat, and it's hard to get your breath quietly. You realize it. For once, it's all clear. You're scared. Not terrified. Healthy, honest, gut-knotted scared. The fear that will make you a better animal for what you must do. You like it, but you'll never be able to explain it later to another man. If he's experienced it, there'll be no need to explain. Where is he? Has he noticed something? Is that why he hasn't hurled himself onto the pig, killing it with one savage clamp of long fangs through the base of the skull? Does he smell a human? Can it be he also feels the fear in the air, both yours and the pig's? You wonder which is stronger. There is the softest sound, or perhaps the lack of sound, from insects near him. That's it. It's not the noise he made, but the noise the night bugs aren't making. He's in front of you, very close. A thrill runs up your spine like a small furry animal. He's looking at you, seeing you through the wet velvet night, his hard yellow eyes dilated to gather light you could never detect. You can feel his eyes, but he's not slinking off. He's studying you, calculating what you are and if you're good to eat. You grip the shotgun tighter, the checkering of the stock leaving its pattern in the flesh of your sweating fingers. He's gonna come, and you can stand it no longer. The fear might get away and become terror now that you know you're the hunted. The light flashes on as the shotgun comes up. His body is a frozen, gold-dappled teardrop of motion in the beam as he begins his charge. In slow motion, you see divots of dead leaves and black dirt his scrabbing hind legs kick into the air. In 15 yards of low, dog-like rush, he is 10 feet in front of the Macan, deep shadows outlining his thick muscles as he gathers for his spring. His front legs are pulled back along his body as he launches into the air. Then they extend, each massive pad tipped with erect yellow hooks to hold your quivering meat. But something has happened. His face is beginning to dissolve into a growing pink mist, chips of shattered fangs angling whitely through the light. His glowing eyes are extinguished as the massed charge of buckshot mangles his head, but the flying bulk of his body keeps irresistibly rising towards you from the power of his spring. A heavy shock hits the Macan, shaking the structure just below your legs. You're thrown off balance, and the beam on your head darts wildly skyward. A heavy, wet sound like a fallen sack of watermelons echoes off the jungle floor below as the big cat hits the ground in a hiss of impact exhaled breath. It is the deadest sound you've ever heard. It is full daylight when we round the last bend of the river upstream from camp, 2 hours into the other jungle world of light. The smile of honest congratulation from Teach is worth more to me than the big skin rolled up in the bow. We split a half bottle of scotch before I finish off the paka and climb exhausted into the hammock.